What's going on, team? It's been a minute since me and this handsome young gentleman, Jose Luis Morales, has gotten together to chop it up with regards to real estate. I was doing a little traveling. I moved. We're back set up, back in the saddle, ready to add value because that's what we do here at the Elite Builders. I mean, Jose, we're talking about it. We're always thinking about to each other, what do agents need right now? We really do our best to focus on tactical information, practical information. You know, People have heard me say, and I continue to repeat, that most people teach mindset because they can't teach tactics. And while mindset has its place, I think we're entering into a phase in real estate. It always has been. It's even more so now, where tactically knowing what to do is increasingly becoming more important and really not a question of, just kind of getting by, but really a question of survival and like maintaining in this business. So the objection that we were going to work through today is one that really I remember, Jose, when we were working together initially in learning, kind of teaching you how to list property in high volume. Dang, bro, what is that? Like a trough of water you got there, bro? You look like you. Hey, you look like Diego, bro. You're like,
It's a gallon and I'm behind, so I got to get to 9 o'clock.
dang, brother, you're gulping it down, dude. So this is an objection that once me and you worked on this together, and there was a mindset component, but then there was also this very practical, like how to actually work through this component or work through this objection. It really tremendously changed your closing ratio on listing appointments. It tremendously boosted your confidence. And I actually remember the first time it happened and they told you they wanted to think about it. And then you went over what we had been role playing and you called me immediately. You're like, oh my gosh, bro, this is like unbelievable, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things that the way I was taught that I need to think about it was always like, well, two minds are better than one. What is it that we have to think about? And the reality is that whenever you say that, a lot of times like, oh, it's no big deal, just something that we need to talk about in private, or hey, look, it's nothing. We just don't make decisions on the spot. And then you get to a place where it's kind of like, oh my God, where do I go from here?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you take this objection in the wrong direction, it starts to feel like you're pushing them.
Yep.
And as soon as you start noticing that it feels like pushing this, instead of them being attracted to you, they're going to feel now repellent to you. And it's not a good way to end the presentation. One, you're not going to walk away with the contract signed. And two, the last impression of you that they're going to have is a pushy impression of you. So whenever I learned how to handle this, it was more like whenever I hear this, it's like, okay, game on. I have to discover what is it that they're thinking about in a way where it doesn't feel like I'm pushing them, and in a way where it also doesn't feel like so the first thing I would say, like if they say I need to think about it, I would say something along the lines like, it's a big decision, isn't it?
So and wait, time out, because I want to dissect what's happening here, because what
Alignment.
Jose's doing here is he's acknowledging, he's not agreeing. He's not agreeing like, yeah, you should think about it. Instead, he's like, yeah, I understand. It's a big decision. You want to make sure you're making the best decision possible. So that is acknowledgement. And then you're also aligning yourself with them.
Yeah.
So right out of the gate.
And what you're going to notice when you say it's a big decision, isn't it? They're going to be like, yeah, it is a big decision. They're even going to be looking at each other like it is a big decision. And now what you're signaling to them is like, you understand that this is a big decision. You're not saying like, well, what is it that you need to think about? Like, why aren't we ready? You're not
you
saying
ready?
what
Jose,
or why.
two minds are better than one. So what are you thinking about?
And the problem is that if you don't go into this discovery mode, like most people will not share with you exactly what they're, or not most people, some people will share with you. And that's the easy one. That's the layup. If somebody's willing to share with you, easy. That it doesn't really require much skill at that point, because it's just like anybody can say, hey, what are you thinking about? and anybody can go in that direction. But the skillful part is when they're not willing to share with you what it is for you to actually be able to discover what it is. So, hey, I know it's a big decision. It's a big decision, isn't it? Great. So here's what I have found. Because it is such a big decision, sometimes when we break this big decision down into smaller decisions, it typically makes the bigger decision easier to make. Can I explain to you what I mean by that?
Sure.
There's really three small decisions that you would need to make here today. The first one is whether or not you actually want to sell the property. Now, based on our conversation, based on our time spent together, it sounds like you're definitely making the move out to Arizona. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Perfect. So let me check that one off the list. The second small decision that we would need to make is the price. Now, obviously, I would like for it to be more. I'm
Hey,
sure
time
that
out.
you would too.
Look at what Jose just did. Did you see what he just did? I don't even know if he realized what he did because it's just programmed into his physical being. He started to smile when he starts to have a conversation where there's going to be a little friction. It's easing the tension. So he's like, the second issue is the price. Now, just imagine it for a moment. I mean, think about yourself as a consumer when somebody tells you how much something costs. It's
Yeah.
like you're like, like bracing, anticipating for pain. So what Jose said is like the second issue is the price, and he started to smile. Did you see his disposition? Like,
Yeah.
go back and watch the video. He was like,
and I do that every single time.
yeah, and that's why I'm pointing that out because I don't want people to gloss over these small, nuanced parts of presenting because I know you do that every single time, and I'm also where you had to train yourself to do it every single time because that's not what you were doing initially.
Well, think about it this way. The second small decision that you need to make is the price. Now, obviously, I would like for it to be more. I'm sure that you would too. You see that? It's different.
Yeah,
it feels different as well too, you know?
Yeah. And by doing that, it's like on an emotional level, you're displaying and demonstrating that you recognize that it's a source of friction and you're doing something to alleviate it, which is like, obviously you'd like it to be more. I sure would as well. The more we sell it for, the more we get compensated to help you. At the same time, having reviewed this information together as a team, having seen what's active on the market and not selling, seeing what's sold and closed most recently, are we in agreement, Jose, that the market is showing us somewhere around X seems to be reasonable? Yeah. Now,
And
there's a key component there too, which you notice is I'm saying the market. And the vast majority of agents and the way that we were initially trained, Jose, are trained to be like, I believe it should be this. And I believe, and personally, I'm saying this to you and to those who are listening, that's a mistake, right? Because what you're doing is you're setting it up for debate. It's much easier to put it on this third party, who could be the bad guy, which is the market and not me. The other thing that you're doing is you're not pigeonholing yourself when you go back and ask for an adjustment if it's not selling. Because if you lead with, I believe, I feel, I can get you, well, you know what they're going to say, Jose, as soon as you call and ask for a reduction? What are they going to say, Jose?
Well, you said my home was worth X.
That's right. They're like, well, you told me, Jose. So can't we do some more marketing? Can't we put in the Wall Street Journal? Can't we do this? Right?
Yeah. So the other thing that I want people to notice is we're going down a checklist of things. So we're going, hey, do you need, have you already decided that you want to sell the property? Why? Because if they haven't decided, how are they going to sign a contract with you if they haven't decided whether or not they want to sell it? If they're not in agreement on the price, how are they going to sign a contract with you if they're not in agreement on the price? So what you're doing here, instead of saying, what are we thinking about? You're going, okay, it's not that they're not selling. It's not the price. It's not me. Then what's left? Commission at that point. So you're basically going down a checklist, and the first three items are the same every single time. And then you can go into other things like, hey, are you good with the marketing? Are you good with the commission? Oh, we actually haven't talked about the commission. Great. So you're basically helping the process move forward by going through this discovery process where you're like, okay, it's not here. The other thing that I want you to be aware is sometimes people in these conversations won't openly share what's going on. So this is where you start using your emotional intelligence. This is where you are paying attention to body language. This is where you're paying attention to how they say things to you. So for example, If I say, are we pretty much in agreement that right around X is the price that the marketplace is recommending that we need to be at to get the property sold? If they say, well, um, yeah, I guess I'm okay with it. You see the I guess I'm okay with it.
Yep.
There's some hesitation there. If you see them like cross their arms, there's some hesitation there. If you hear them say, well, to be honest, I was hoping that it was more, but I guess if that's what the marketplace is saying, I guess I'm okay with it. That's their way of them telling you without telling you, hey, price is potentially one of the things that we need to think about, or price is one of the issues that we're not in alignment with. So if you notice any sort of hesitation there, if you notice like they're like, yeah, I'm okay with it, but I'd like for it to be more, I would say, great. It sounds like price is potentially one of the things that maybe we need to talk about a little bit more. Here's what I want to do. What I want to do is I want to make sure that you feel absolutely comfortable, and I want to make sure that you feel confident. So what I want to do is I want to revisit our conversation about price in just a few moments.
Yeah.
The
And
last small
I love that. So, and the only thing that comes up for me as you say that, the only thing I would add there is like, yeah, I want you to feel completely comfortable with whatever you end up doing. So, whether you decide to hire me or somebody else, what I'd like to do is to go over with you and, price. So that way you can be as clear as possible and you can make the decision that you feel is best. And whatever you decide, of course, I'm going to support you 100%. And in doing so, you're demonstrating like I'm not attached to the outcome. It's very similar to what you do with those cash offers where you're like, yeah, it sounds like you want retail. So what I would recommend you do is if you have an agent that you know, like, and trust, I would call them and tell them like, hey, I want to list the property. Now, what's also true is, I happen to be a licensed real estate agent in the state of California. We do $80 million in volume on a yearly basis. So I can help you if you're open to working with me in that way. Is that something you're open to? It's the same strategy and approach, right? So whether you decide to hire me or somebody else, I want you to be crystal clear as it pertains to price. So that way you can make the decision that you feel is best. And whatever you decide, I'll support you 100%.
the other thing you have to think about like is this as well too. Like let's say you're buying a car and the salesperson you tell them something and he goes, well, look, it's okay, like this is all about you feeling comfortable and confident with this. I don't want you to do anything that you don't feel comfortable and confident. So what I want to do is I want to explain things to you in a way where you're going to feel comfortable about whatever decision you end up making. How does that make you feel as a
Oh,
consumer? Like
fantastic.
you're like, hey, this guy's not trying to sell me something. He wants to make sure that I feel comfortable and I feel good about it. And that's the reality about this. So it's also received very well when you're like, hey, look, I want to make sure that you feel comfortable and I want to make sure that you feel confident about this. So what I like to do is I like to revisit the conversation about price in just a few moments. The last small decision that we need to make is whether I'm the type of agent that you want working for you. Now, obviously, I mean, you've checked out our reviews online. You've like looked at the marketing plan already. We've met in person as well too. Am I the type of agent that you want working for you, really fighting tooth and nail to help you get every single dollar out of this property? And then at that point, they may say, well, look, Jose, yes, you're the agent that we want us to help. And then at that point, you're like, okay, well, it sounds like you've already decided that you want me to help you. And it sounds like the only thing that we really have to talk about is the price. Let me ask you this. If we can come to some sort of agreement on the price, is there any other reason why we couldn't move forward today?
Yeah.
You
So
know?
two things I want to point out to people. The first is notice when he got to that third question, he did the same thing again. So the third decision that needs to be made prior to putting a home on the market is who's going to help you. Now, obviously, I'm here and I'd love to have the opportunity to earn your business. At the same time, I'm aware you probably did some due diligence. You checked me out online. You saw track record reviews, things of that nature. So based on our initial conversation via telephone, based on our conversation today, based on what you've seen online and your due diligence, do you feel comfortable and confident with me that I can not only help you sell this home, but I would look out for your best interest? Now, notice he did the same thing as he did last time. He started smiling once he was asking a very direct question, because what you're doing there is you're uh, defusing like the situation and bringing in levity, which releases pressure. That's what's really happening. But you notice he did it like this. He didn't even have to think about it. Like that's what he does all the time. But I know he trained himself to do it. So whenever
Yeah.
he's asking those like price like that, he's smiling. Obviously, I'd like it to be more. I'm sure you would as well. We get compensated more the more we help you sell it for. At the same time, having looked at this information together as a team, seen what's active on the market, not selling, and what's sold and closed most recently, are we in agreement that the market is showing us somewhere around X seems to be reasonable? Same approach when we get to a straightforward, direct question like, hey, am I the type of person that you want to do business with? So he's like, the third question that you need to answer is if I'm the type of person that you want to do business with. You notice he smiled, he did the same thing, like a
And what
little puppy.
happens is, and what happens is when the other person is smiling, it usually causes the person receiving to
To smile.
smile as well too,
Yeah.
for whatever
And they
reason. I don't know.
and they know what you're doing. Like they, you know what I mean? They know you're asking them for business, but you're also doing it in like a way that again is not abrasive. It's not like overly aggressive. And again, you're diffusing a situation that has the potential to create like some tenseness. Because keep in mind, if you consider for yourself, uh, when somebody is asking you to make a decision, whatever that decision is, and me and Jose are in the business of asking people to make decisions, whether that's to partner with us, whether that's to sign listing agreements, whether that's to come to events, like whatever the case may be, there's almost uniformly resistance.
100%.
It's the exception to the rule when there's no resistance. That's the
Hey,
exception.
is there something wrong? I'm kidding.
Yeah.
There wasn't any resistance. What's going
Yeah,
on? I'm
yeah, yeah.
kidding.
Yeah, that's the exception, truthfully. So, the way that you can ease that tension is with brevity and kind of levity and smiling. Sometimes I would tell jokes. So, like when we get to the price and they're like, well, what do you think, Aaron? It's like, well, do I have permission to be candid, straightforward? They're like, yeah. I'm like, you're not going to throw me out of the house? And they're like, ha, ha, ha. You're not going to get angry and throw me out of the house? They're like, maybe, we'll see. But you're breaking tension.
And that's part of being a great presenter. I
Part of being a great
personally
presenter.
believe that in order to be a dominant listing agent, you have to become a great presenter at your listing presentation, even on the telephone, whatever it is that you're doing, you have to be really good at presenting. And that's a skill that you can take anywhere. So it's like not a skill that like, hey, look, if you ever switch careers, you ever do something else, you can take this anywhere to do absolutely anything because you're
100%.
investing in yourself.
Yes. Now, the second thing I wanted to point out is something that you did, which is also very strategic. It's something called a set aside. So what's really happening here, guys, and this is the same thing that I taught Jose when he was initially going on 100 listing appointments and taking like 5. They were telling him he wanted to think about it, and he was like, okay. And then he'd go home and be like, I think I really got it because they like cowboys and I like cowboys, and like, they're Mexican and I'm Mexican. Like, I think they're gonna list with me, and then they would list with somebody else.
Yeah. And it was
So
because I didn't address one of the things that they were concerned about. I didn't address the price, the commission, the marketing. I left without finding out what was the issue and then addressing the issues.
yeah, he didn't know how to skillfully flesh out what the issues were. And what this like 3 different decisions a seller needs to make prior to putting a home in the market, that's a fleshing out. It's like, let's put it on the table. What is it? Right? Because if you've done this properly, the way that, we teach people how to do it, which is like you pre-qualify, you ask all the questions, you don't omit any of them, right? You're upfront in the prequel and you say, yeah, when we do connect, if it all makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident with me that I can help, you do that due diligence, you check me out online, you see track record and reviews. Do you think you'd be open to the possibility of hiring me when I see you tomorrow at 6? Like if you do all of that properly, you're setting the stage, and 75% of the selling should be done because they're going to go online, look at reviews, look at all the data that you sent them, watch the video that you sent out, before you go see them. And now it's just terms and conditions. That's it. That's really it. Price, terms, and conditions. That's all it should be. So if they're telling you that they want to think about it, I'm not able to address those thinking about, like, ask yourself a question if you're watching this. How many times has somebody told you want to think about it? They call back, they told you they listed with somebody else. And if they would have told you what it was, it would have been fine. You could have dealt with it. But the reason that you weren't able to is because you didn't know how to flesh it out.
And here's the thing. If they really, whenever they say I need to think about it, if you don't have a skillful way of finding out what it is that they need to think about, by you asking, what do you need to think about? They would have just told you, well, look, if they really wanted to tell you what they needed to think about, they would have just told you, well, Jose, look, I'm not really happy with the price, or look, Jose, I'm not really happy with the commission,
Yeah.
which that would be a lot easier. But if you're asking like, well, what is it that we have to think about? My belief is that they would have just told you if they really wanted to share it with you. So unless you have a very skillful way of discovering what it is that they want to think about, then that is not going to work. Now, here's another thing I wanted to clarify. So, like in some cases, on the last question, am I the type of agent that you want working for you, really fighting tooth and nail to help you get every single dollar out of the property? What they might say is, well, we like you. Or they might say, like, well, that's one of the things that we're still thinking about, basically, at this point. Now, if they say that we like you, that doesn't mean that they're going to work with you. That doesn't mean that they're going to hire you. So you may want to add a little bit of clarification. Well, I guess let me ask it in this way. Have you already decided that you want me to help you sell this property?
Yes. Now, time out. I want you to be really clear on what's happening there. And that's really what we're doing here. So when we flesh out, there's 3 different decisions seller needs to make prior to putting a home on the market. I'd like to review them. And here's what I would add, Jose. I would say before I go, what I'd like to do is go over those 3 decisions that you need to make prior to putting your home on the market. So that way you and Mariela, you guys can make the decision that you feel is best. And whatever you decide, I'll support you 100%. So when I say before I go, what is Jose thinking in his mind? We're done.
Yeah, we're done. Yeah.
All the pressure's off. We're done. But we're not done.
That's what they want. They want to avoid that conversation. They want to avoid actually sharing with you what the real issue is, and the whole 2 heads are better than 1. That's not going to work. I promise you.
No, because it's confrontational.
I tried that so many times, hoping that they would tell me, and they wouldn't.
That's right. So by saying like, yeah, before I go, it's called the Columbo close, right? So there was an old show way before you were born where there was this guy who was before I was born too. I used to watch reruns, but he was like a detective, and he looked like an idiot through the whole show, like he didn't know what was going on. And then at the end of the show, at the end of the 30-minute episode, Jose, he'd be getting ready to walk out, and he'd go, "Before I go, I just have one question for you." And that one question would like unravel the whole thing, and he'd solve the mystery, right? So that's what we're doing. It's like, before I go, what I'd like to do is just go over the 3 decisions a seller needs to make prior to putting their home on the market. And my hope in doing so is so that way you can make the decision that you feel is best. And whatever you decide, I'll support you. Fair enough. So in Jose's mind, he's like, okay, this is done. And he relaxes. Again, what are we doing here? Our intention is to continue to kind of escalate the situation, like ease that tension internally. And when we can do that with language, and we could do that with our body language, right? Yeah, Roy Ray says he learned polite confrontation from us. Yeah, for sure.
I love it.
Martin Hughes is in here. He says, this is exactly what I mentioned, exactly what to say. I've heard of that book. I've never read it, but truth is truth, Martin. People usually come to it in different ways. They have different ways of describing it or marketing it, but it's just true. So,
hey, shout out to Martin Hughes. He's our newest EXP partner.
Let's go. Let's grow. So, hey, you made a great decision, just so you know, Martin. So, yeah, so we're alleviating that tension. We go over the 3 decisions. The purpose of the 3 decisions, guys, just so everybody's clear, is to flesh out what's really holding them back. What is it actually? Is it price? And again, like Jose's saying, when you mention that, so the first thing people need to think about prior to putting their home on the market is potentially, price. Watch their body language. See what happens. Somebody goes like this, it's price. They start to tense up immediately. They look at each other real quick. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Most of the time, it's going to be another agent, price, or commission.
That's it.
One of those 3 things. So if you know that going into it, you could almost and there's even been situations where, and I share this with Aaron, where it's like, well, I need to think about it, where it's just more direct. If I know it's one of those 3 things and I pre-qualified the appointment correctly before I went on, there's even been situations where I've been like, Aaron, can I be fully transparent with you? Yes.
Sure.
I get the feeling that the one thing you need to think about is the commission.
Yeah. It's funny when you called me and said that to me, the guy looked at you like,
how did you know?
Do you know?
Yeah. And there's even been times where I'm like, can I be fully transparent with you? I think that the one thing that you need to think about is you didn't like the price that the marketplace is recommending. And that's one of the things that you need to think about. Is that correct? And they're like, yeah, that is correct. Or can I be fully transparent with you? Mm-hmm. One of the things that you need, I get the feeling that one of the things that you need to think about is the price. And the second thing is the commission. You think that the commission is too high and you don't like the price that the marketplace is recommending. Is that correct? And now they're like, yeah. Let me ask you this. If we can come to an agreement on the price and we can come to an agreement on the commission, would there be any other reason why we couldn't work together and actually get this property on the marketplace for you?
Exactly. Now, what's happening there. So look, I want people to see procedurally what's happening. Because a lot of times, Jose, what I've learned having coached agents for like over a decade, they get so caught up on like our language patterns. They imagine that it's just language patterns, but I
No,
need you to
body
understand.
language. Yeah.
And I need you to understand what's happening underneath. Because if you don't understand why, like if you don't understand what's actually happening procedurally, then you just become a robot that's spitting out words and it won't be as effective and efficient for you. I promise you. It took Jose 6 months of us working on this stuff diligently. And every time we would role play, he'd hop on with specific questions. He would record it. He would write out the answers. Like he was very, very intentional before he actually it clicked. And he was like, oh, I understand the process underneath. It took a while, like 6 to 8 months for him to understand it. So the reason why I keep pausing here and explaining to you what's happening underneath is because it's really, really important for you to understand. So by going through this procedurally, asking those questions, these are the common hangups that are going to be, holding people back. And you just have the intestinal fortitude to put them on the table, right? And then I'm monitoring as I'm going through these things. I'm watching, I'm looking at body language, I'm looking to see like what's going on. And then I can address them right away. And then what Jose said there, which is called a set aside, if we could come to an agreement on the price, on the professional fee, whatever the hangup is, on both of them, do you think there'd be any other reason why we couldn't proceed today? What that's doing is imagine there was like an impediment between you and them. There's like a boulder, right? Like you're trying to talk to them and there's this boulder, like this big rock in front of them. What you're doing is you're grabbing that rock, you're picking it up psychologically. You're grabbing the rock, picking it up, moving it to the side. And then you're pointing at it and you're saying, Jose, if we can agree on that over there, is there any reason why we couldn't do this? And then it's very straightforward. And what you'll find is they'll either be like Jose saying no, or they'll be like, they'll look at each other and be like, what do you think, babe? And they're like, no. Or they'll be like, well, we may, we do have that other interview. So if that happens, now I can isolate that, handle that, right? And then we can get back to these others and address them. And then we can get into a closing sequence. Because then it's like, okay, it sounds as though, like, let's say they say it's like price. Great. So if we can come to an agreement on the price, and I want to be clear that I'm on your team, the more we help you sell it for, the more we get, and price very much so is a strategy and attempt to get the most. So we can review the strategies that you have because I want you to feel comfortable with the one we end up choosing. And I can promise you this, that's not going to be a reason why we don't do business. I feel very confident that we'll be able to, come to a meeting of the minds. So I guess if we could agree on that, do you think there'd be any other reason why we couldn't proceed today? They're like, no. Great. So then tell me, what were you thinking? And now shut up. Before you start to pontificate, before you start to give all the reasons why, like, what were you thinking? Let's say Jose's like, I'm thinking like 1.1. It's like, okay. And watch what I'm going to say now. You ready? That's an option, Jose. What did I just do for Jose? Did I make him feel stupid? Did I make him feel wrong? Did I make him feel silly?
No.
Ask yourself and ask yourself a question. If you've ever gone on a listing presentation and somebody says something like that you perceive to be outlandish or not in alignment with reality, if your body betrayed you, if you went like this, when they said 1.1, you were like, or your body language is like, like really? Like, it's seeped out of you. Instead, what I'm going to do is look at Jose and be like, okay, sure. I want to be clear. That's an option. I mean, you're the boss. My job is to help you make a decision. It's never to talk you into doing anything. And I want you to understand how diametrically opposed that is to what every other agent is doing. They're all only focused on being right. Like specifically, what causes you to believe? And like, here, let's look at the stats again. And here's X, Y, and Z. And this is price per square foot, blah, blah, blah. Like, that is completely wrong. And then I am telling Jose, like, yeah, like that's an option. I mean, you're the boss.
Yeah. And what I would say is that, let's say that let's say that they say, yes, I'm definitely selling. Let's say that price is not the issue. And let's say that they say, yes, we're open to working together. At that point, what I would do is I would continue going down the pattern and be like, okay, great. So we're in agreement on, you're definitely selling. We're in agreement on the price. You're in agreement on that you want me to help you. Let me ask you this, like, what about the compensation? Are you good with the compensation that we're charging?
Love
Yes,
that.
we're good. What about the marketing? Are you good with the marketing that we're going to be doing to market and sell your property? Yes, I'm good with it. Then at that point, you can close again. Be like, look, I mean, we're in agreement on all these things. It sounds like you've already decided that you want me to help you. Can I make a recommendation to you? Here's what I would propose. I'm ready to go to work for you. I'm ready to get started. I love the home. I love the crown molding. Love this. Would you give me the opportunity to work with you? And smile.
Yeah,
You know,
smile, and then when they say yes, you close them with the Jose handshake, bro. You just reach your hand out and shake their hand.
yeah,
But you
be like,
see what
look,
he's doing there? I want everybody to be clear what's happening here. And I also want everybody to be clear. When I first met Jose, he did not know how to do this.
no.
He learned.
Yeah,
It's a
this is a
skill
skill.
that you can learn. He didn't know how to do this at all, right? So if you notice what he's doing is it's isolating objections. So it's like, hey, are we in agreement on this? They're like, yep. Are we in agreement on this? Yep. Are we in agreement on this? Yep. Well,
What about this and this?
yeah, and with that being said, I mean, it
Can I
really
make
seems like you've made all the decisions that a seller needs to make prior to putting their home on the market. May I make a suggestion? Like, yeah, like, let's do this. Smile. You're here. I'm here. I'm ready to get to work. I have the paperwork with me. I mean, we can take care of it and get you one step closer to Texas. I mean, wouldn't that be great? And they look at each other and like, what do you think, honey? And you're like, yeah, I think he's great. And then you could tell little jokes. And when people say that, they're like, yeah, I think he's the guy. I'm like, yep, I'm going to start bringing you on all my appointments. And they're like, ha, ha, ha. And then they sign a contract and you leave. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how you do that. And this
Yeah,
skill, it will be the difference. And you can speak on this, but it's the difference between taking 3 listings a month and taking 8 listings a month. I promise you.
100%. This one thing is that difference right there. So, can I make a recommendation? I'm ready to go to work for you. I'm excited about this property. I'm excited about marketing this home. I believe in the property. Like all I need is the opportunity. Would you give me the opportunity to work with you? And then they're going to look at each other and they're going to smile. Now, the other thing that you have to do is a lot of times when they're like, well, we're not sure if we're selling, what most people want to do is they want to handle that right then and there before checking off all of the other items. What you need to do is before if they're like, well, I'm not sure if I'm selling, great. Sounds like that's one of the things that we need to think about. We're going to revisit that in a moment because I want to make sure that you feel comfortable. Then you're like, the second small decision is the price. Obviously, I would like for it to be more. I'm sure that you would too. Or we pretty much in agreement that right around X is the price that the market is recommending that we need to be at. No, boom. So like, let's say they say that you notice hesitation there. Now you're going down, instead of handling them right there on the spot, you're like, great, I want to make sure that you feel comfortable and confident with the price. That's going to be one of the things that we need to talk about. Now, at the end, you're like, well, look, if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like one of the things that you need to talk about is obviously whether or not you're making the move, which I want to make sure that we address that. The other thing is the price. And the last thing is the commission. Let me ask you this. If we can come to an agreement on these items, would there be any other reason we couldn't move forward and get started today? Now, if they're like, no, we would be, regardless of what they say, you're going to address the individual items. You're going to be like, okay, well, tell me more. When you say that you're not sure whether or not you want to make the move, tell me more about that. And now you're addressing that. Let's say you address
Yeah,
that.
and then you
Great.
can say like, so, and again, what I want everybody to realize what he's doing, the way I view this, it's like I'm
Like a
taking the
cockpit.
objection and I'm
Okay.
putting it in a cage. It's like I'm taking each one, I put it in a cage and then I handle it. So let's say they're like, "Oh, we're not sure we're gonna move." It's like, which you should know in the prequel before you go, but let's say they say
Yeah.
that. You're like, "Okay, well, I wanna be clear, my job's to help you, it's never to talk you into doing anything." So what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is just ask a couple questions so I can get some more clarity on that, and perhaps it can help you get clarity, and then whatever you decide is perfectly fine. Would that be okay? And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay, so is it an option for you guys to not sell the home and still move? Is it an option for you to rent the home and still move?" Right? If you did rent the home, would you guys be the ones that were trying to manage it from long distance? Have you ever been a long distance landlord before? You just start to boom, 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 boom to help them to get clarity on if they actually mean what they're saying. Because sometimes it's just a knee jerk reaction because they're not getting what they want.
Yeah.
Like I thought
And
I
then,
was going to get $100,000 more. So like, okay, I'm not going to move, which potentially could be true, but I won't be able to know unless I box that objection in. I put it in a cage and then I handle it. And then once it's handled, let's say you do that and they're like, nah, honey, like we actually do have to sell the property. Okay. So it sounds like that's really not a serious consideration for you guys. So with that being said, in order for you guys to get what you want, the time you want, sounds like you have decided that it makes the most sense to actually sell the property. Is that right? Now notice who's decided? They have, not me. I'm not like trying to talk them into selling. And then it's like, okay, so with that being the case, like I'm imagining that part of the reason why you even mention that is like the price that the marketplace is showing us is going to be required in order to get it sold. Is that right? And they're like, yeah, that's right. Okay. So if what I think would make sense is for us to take another look at that very closely. So we can be in agreement of what the marketplace is showing us. Remember, price is a strategy and attempt to get the most. We can go over the strategies that you have because I do want you to feel comfortable with the one we end up choosing. Does that make sense to you? Yeah. Okay. And if we could agree on that, do you think there'd be any reason why we couldn't proceed? I don't think so. Great. Now I go over it, we handle it, and then close.
So now you're going over the different things. Like I role played this morning, and he came up. It came up with three of them. It was commission, price, and I'm not really sure if I want to work with you. Now
Yeah.
you get to decide which order you want to handle those in. The
Yep.
order that I chose was the price first, then I chose the commission, and then I chose the agent portion
Yeah.
of it.
Which I think is logical because I think it's really in that order.
Yeah.
And I think it's like you're doing the heavy lifting up front. Now, what I would do as a pro tip is when I handled the first one, I might close. Because sometimes it's really like they forget about the other ones. You know what I mean? It's just like that one. And you're like, okay, so it seems like we're in agreement. So let's say it's price. It's like, all right, well, let's have a conversation because I want you to feel comfortable with whatever you decide to doing, whether it's me or whoever you hire. So let's review that together as a team. You go over it, and then let's say we're in agreement. So we're in agreement that the marketplace is showing us somewhere within that range, maybe like 750, 770, somewhere in that range is reasonable. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, great. So it sounds like we're in agreement with regards to where to position it. Do you have any other questions before we take care of the paperwork? They're like, whoa. Sometimes they'll be like, no, I don't think so. Boom, move forward. Other times they'll be like, wait, we have to talk about the professional fee. Oh yeah, my bad.
I was gonna say the same thing. It's so funny. I was gonna say, in worst case scenario, if they're like, "Oh, we haven't talked about this," or if they say no, you go back. You know what? My most sincere apology. I actually overlooked. We still have to talk about the commission, and we still have to talk about this, basically.
Right.
But it's almost like oh my god, I'm so sorry about this. I actually overlooked this. We haven't talked about it, so you can just go right down to the next one.
Yeah.
At
So
that
like,
point.
and
But what he's
think
saying
about
is correct, that you can actually potentially close. So there's two options you can take it in. And you'll be able to tell based on the situation. One is you can close, or two, you can go down to the next item or the next item. But if you close and it doesn't work, you have to apologize. I would apologize. Be like, you know what? I'm so sorry about this. I actually overlooked. We actually haven't talked about the commission, and you mentioned to me that was important. Let's go over the commission at this point, basically.
And what's so interesting is I was thinking about this is as a consumer or as someone who helps people to make decisions, which I've helped people make thousands of decisions, and still do. How many of you guys have made the decision, then want to know about the details afterwards? Happens all the time, Jose. You're like making a decision and like it's really this internal things because we're actually feeling beings that think. We're not thinking beings that feel. So there's this internal hang up and somebody helps you to overcome the internal hang up and you're like, yeah, let's do it. And then you're like, okay, like what are the details? But you've already decided that you want to do it. So what happens is like what you're doing is you're in like moving them down the path. Think about it like a football game where you're moving them down the field to get to the end zone. Like that's what's happening. And each one of these little decisions, each one of these little agreements is moving them in that direction. Yeah. And then if they're like, oh yeah, the professional fee, or how many of us have somebody's made a decision for whatever reason, and while you're taking care of paperwork, they start to ask you about terms and conditions. They've already decided, but they're like, oh yeah, how long is this agreement? You're like, yeah, it's a standard agreement. It's 6 months. That sort of thing. Like, oh yeah, and are there any other fees other than like the 6% or 5% or wherever you negotiated? And you're like, no, that's it. It's like, okay, and then so I need you guys. I think most people think, Jose, that people make decisions because it makes complete analytical sense. No, most people make decisions internally, emotionally first, then figure out the details after.
Yeah. Even when I say like hey, I'm excited about can I make a recommendation? I'm actually really excited to get your property sold. I think that you've got a great home. It's in a great neighborhood. I love the fact that it's on a cul-de-sac. Love the fact that it's on a corner lot. I'm excited. I'm ready to get to work for you. The only thing that I wanted to ask you is, would you give me the opportunity to work with you? When I say it that way, I feel like it's like an emotional thing, like for them. It's not like it's not. It's almost like they got excited about it, you know. And a lot of times, I would say that it's not logical. Sometimes it's very emotional, type of in the moment how we feel about it. And if
Agreed.
you start to feel pushy, I promise you, they feel it too. And if they feel it, it's not gonna they're gonna repel it
Yeah.
100%. Because I was in
Yep.
that position so many times where it started to feel like that. And it's almost like you're better off just walking away and not getting into that pushiness if they start to feel it than to basically try to close for it, basically.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And then if you start to feel it, well, look, Martin asked a question, or Ray did. Roy, he said, "What's the average amount of time to complete your listing presentation?" For me personally, 30 minutes, like tops. I should be in and out of the house within an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. It shouldn't take much longer than that. If it is, you're telling, you're not selling. And remember, you're going to do all of this work up front. So that only is true if you've pre-qualified fully on the spot, if you sent out a pre-listing email with a pre-listing package and the comps before you go see them, if you send a bomb video before you go see them, if you push them to reviews so they can make the majority of the decision before you're actually there, versus having to sit with you and then go back and do the kind of reconnaissance and like homework and background checking sort of thing.
I would say it depends on a couple factors. If the seller is a chatterbox, it's going to go longer than that.
Yeah.
If I have to go over the plan of action, it's going to go longer than that, basically.
Yeah. And for me, again, on average, because you will get different personality types,
Yeah.
on average, like an hour, 10 hour and 15 minutes, including paperwork. It should be like, again,
Yeah.
we should be just talking about terms and conditions. Like that's really it. Like, right. If I set it up properly. And then we can go into this closing sequence, with analyticals might take a little longer, with those chatter boxes, it might take a little longer. But then it's up to me to kind of direct a little bit.
Yeah.
The conversation, people get off on a tangent, you got to bring them back, sort of thing. And yeah, and then if you feel, the other thing that came up for me when you were saying that, Jose, if you feel that like it's feeling like a little pushy, or you feel uncomfortable asking, because I remember I was sitting down with this guy and he was a job relocation. He's moving. He'd already interviewed like 5 agents. And I was like, wow, man, that's he's like, yeah, I want to think about it. And I went through the sequence. Okay, well, it's a big decision. You want to make sure you make the best decision possible. So what I'd like to do before I go is just go over the 3 decisions selling needs to make prior to putting their home on the market. So that way you can decide what you feel is best. Whatever you decide, I'll support you 100%. Fair enough? He's like, fair. We go through the sequence. He's like, nope, price seems to make sense. Professional fee is right in alignment with the others. I'm like, well, having seen our track record and reviews and based on our conversation today, do you feel comfortable and confident with me that I can help? He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, sounds like you've already made your decision. I mean, I'm here, you're here. Like, let's do this. And he was like, well, I got one more interview. And I was like, yeah, I appreciate that. Or maybe 2 more interviews. And I was like, wow, man. And I was like, yeah, and I guess I'm curious because, the reason why people like you hire me, Jose? And he's like, why? I'm like, because I get contracts signed. I mean, that's what you expect me to do as your agent, right? So let's imagine for a moment that you hire me for the job, which again, why am I doing that? I'm putting that in his mind like he hired me. Let's imagine for a moment, Jose, you already hired me for the job. I'm showing the property. You happen to be here because I know you work from home. And you overhear the buyer say, hey, this is a great property. And you're like, what are they saying? And then they're like, I think I want to make an offer. And you're like, oh, this is great. And then they say, I think I want to make a full price or even over full price offer. And you're like, oh my gosh, you can't even contain yourself. You just want to run out and go shake their hand. And then you know what they say to me? I want to think about it. I want to go look at a few other homes and then I'll make my decision. Now, as your agent that you've hired, would you want me to just say, okay? Or would you want me to very patiently and professionally, with a very big smile on my face, proceed to ask them questions to help them to make a great decision, which is not to go look at those other properties, but instead to write a full price offer on your property? What would you expect me to do as your agent? He's like, well, I expect you to get the contract signed. Exactly. And just by you saying that demonstrates that you recognize that I'm displaying that very skill right now. You see, I am not afraid to ask you to make a great decision, which is to hire me today. Just like I'm not going to be afraid to ask a buyer to write a full price offer on your property. That's what you'd expect from your agent, isn't it? He was like, yeah, it is. I'm like, you know what the great news is? He's like, what's that? You found what you're looking for, brother. I mean, you really don't want to spend another 2 hours of your life listening to real estate agents, do you? He's like, not really. I'm like, great. Well, I have the paperwork. Let's go to work. Great. Sign the contract. And I walked out of there with a listing agreement. So
Hold on. If there was a way to drop this mic, I would drop it.
like that's you just have to like get comfortable with that and know that like nothing happens until a decision is made. Like you're actually helping them. You're helping them to move forward in their life. You're helping them to get closer to getting the home sold. You're helping them to get closer to their next moving situation. And it's true. Like I'm demonstrating a skill. That's what people expect from their agents. The other thing I would say is if you feel that and they're starting to be like, hey, like I'd really appreciate if you don't, if you like overdo it sort of thing. What I would say is like, look, I just want to be clear. Like my intention is not to be pushy. It's really not. My intention instead is just to demonstrate to you that I'm 100% committed to helping you get the property sold. And I'm not afraid to ask you to make a great decision, just like I'm not going to be afraid to ask a buyer to write a full price offer on your property. I mean, that's what you expect from your agent, isn't it? And they're like, yeah. So it's like, all right, so if we can come to agreement on terms, you know what I mean? So you can address it. But this skill, guys, you heard it from Jose, you're hearing it from me. Between us, we've probably sold, I don't know, 3,000, 3,500 homes, whatever it is. This skill is the difference between taking 2 to 3 listings a month and taking 8 to 10 listings a month. Think about how many appointments you've been on where you walked out of there and you didn't know what the reason why they didn't sign was. You felt it. You felt they weren't telling you something. You felt like, but you didn't know. Think about how many times you've been on an appointment. They call you up and say, yeah, we list with Jose. We really felt like he believed in our property and in our price. And you're like, shit, I would have listed at a higher price and come down if we just would have talked about it. Or somebody says, yeah, we listed with the other agent. They provided us like a better fee structure. You're like, bro, I would have talked to you, had a conversation with you about it, but you didn't flesh it out. And then you get mad at them when it's like, nah, bro, you didn't uncover what the situation was. Like, what's the actual issue? So the better you get at uncovering, the more comfortable you get with what we call polite confrontation, the better you get at being straightforward. And when you ask straightforward questions, again, smile because it diffuses the situation. And the better you get at asking, the more contracts you'll get signed. Like, period, end of story.
Yeah. And that line that he used about like, hey, look, like one of the reasons why people hire me is because I help people make great decisions, right? I get contract signed. You can say however it is that you want or however you feel comfortable. Hey, one of the reasons why people hire me is I help them make great decisions. Let me give you a quick example, But I think that right there is such a good way of like even differentiating yourself. Like, because you're demonstrating, they're like, oh, wow, like, like this guy is actually very professionally and respectfully, like, helping me make this decision. And you're going to realize some people don't want to interview 2 more people, And it's funny. They're like, in some cases, they might be like, well, what am I going to say to the other 2 agents? Like, it'd be like, don't even worry about it. I'll let them know.
Wait, you know what I'll do just for you, Jose? To get our professional relationship started off right, it happens all the time. It's not a big deal. What I'll do on your behalf is I'll reach out to Jose. I'll let him know that you decided to hire us to help. And we'll give him the first opportunity to collaborate with us and bring us a buyer. Like, wow, you do that for me? I'm like, just for you.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like, I'll even let them know that if they bring us a buyer, I will pay them a bonus.
Yeah.
Just so that like they're excited about showing our property. And this way you get the best agent representing you and you still have them obviously promoting the property as well too.
How's that sound? And they're like, wow, that's great. You would do that? Yeah, just for you. So did you want to authorize first or is it Mariela first? Done. Yeah. Hey, and by the way, it's like one of my favorite phone calls to make. Yay. Hey, what's up, team? Yep, you got that appointment at 5. I just want to let you know that I met with the Smiths. They decided to hire us for the job. I just want to save you some time. They already signed a listing agreement. I do appreciate you. We'd love to have the opportunity to work with you. So if you got any buyers, bring them by. Bye bye now. You know, what a
I think
sweet guy. That's what
I
Ray
think
said.
I think this was really helpful. I think the other things is that maybe on a future video we can break down like, okay, like, hey, they said they need to think about the whether or not they're making the move, how to break that one down. Hey, they need to think about the price, how to break that one down. Hey, they need to think about whether I'm the type of agent that they want representing them. Or hey, look, they need to think about the commission. Because these are all like separate conversations right there, just depending on which one that they need to think about and your ability to be able to very skillfully go through those different ones and handle them correctly will allow you to get more contracts signed, which that's
Oh,
what we
like
want
period,
for you guys.
period, end of story. And along those lines of getting more contracts signed, we're actually going to be doing for the first time uh, like a digital summit where myself, Jose, John Mikish, Lars from Real Estate B School, Jessica Nelson, Angel Garcia, my wife Carla, on September 20th. We're going to get together and just basically be adding as much value as we possibly can around what you need to do to finish the rest of 2024 strong. There's lots of changes happening and things in the industry, whether it be economics, we have an election, interest rates, some of these rule changes and paperwork, how to document these conversations now and mechanisms with which we get paid. So we got a top-notch A+ lineup of individuals that are going to be there to add value and to pour into you guys. What I'm going to do, I'm sending it to myself right now so I can drop it in the chat. And he said, "Yo, is it okay if I wear cowboy boots and on the bomb?" Yeah, it's cool, bro. Do whatever you want, dude. I'm going to drop it in the comments here so that way you guys can get registered. It's completely free, team. We're here to just add value and to help you to do as many deals as we possibly can. Do you have anything to add on that, Jose, while I get that link and I can drop it?
No, I think it's good. I think that we're going to continue doing videos like this. If you have future topics that you want us to address, drop it in the chat. And then also, like, if you want to see previous videos that we've done, check them out on Aaron Novello's YouTube channel. And we've got probably like 10 videos like this that we've done where we break down specific topics and we give you guys tactical information as to how to get more contracts signed, basically.
That's what's up. It's the good shit, not the bullshit, baby. So Elite Builders Coast to Coast, we're out.
All right, later, guys.
Peace.